The morning sun painted the memorial garden in soft gold light. Jin Park walked slowly along the stone path, his old boots making quiet sounds on the smooth ground. He came here every day at the same time, just after breakfast, when the garden was still empty and peaceful. 50 years had passed since the Great War ended. 50 years since the galaxy had seen peace. But Jin still remembered the sounds of battle, the screams of wounded soldiers, and the weight of medical supplies on his back as he ran through smoke and fire to save lives. The garden held statues of heroes from every species that fought in the war. Tall crystal beings stood next to small furry creatures. Metal robots stood beside plant-like aliens. And in the center of it all, the most beautiful statue Jin had ever seen. She was carved from black stone that seemed to shine from within. Her face was kind but strong, with high cheekbones and full lips curved in the smallest smile. Scales covered parts of her skin, making patterns that caught the light. Large wings spread behind her shoulders. Her eyes were closed, but Jin always felt like she might open them at any moment. The metal plate at the base read simple words: Zarathen the Ancient, Dragon Empress of the Void Reaches, died defending the Terran colonies, age 940. 940 years old when she died. Jin could barely imagine living that long. He was only 72. And some days his old bones felt every single year. But she had given up centuries more of life to protect humans she had never met. Jin stopped in front of her statue like he did every morning. He looked up at her peaceful face and felt the same sadness he always did. So much beauty and wisdom, lost forever. "Good morning, beautiful," he said softly. It was their little routine. He talked to her sometimes, telling her about his day or sharing news from the colony. It made him feel less alone. Today felt different somehow. Maybe it was the perfect morning light. Or maybe it was the fact that today marked exactly 50 years since the war's end. Jin felt bold, almost playful. "You know," he said, stepping closer to the statue, "in all my visits, I never properly thanked you for what you did." He paused, feeling a little silly. "You saved millions of humans. You saved me, even though we never met." The garden was completely empty. No one would see. Jin had always been a little impulsive, even as an old man. Before he could stop himself, he stood on his toes and gently kissed the statue's stone cheek. "Thank you for your sacrifice, beautiful," he whispered against the cool stone. The stone was not cool anymore. Jin jerked back, his heart pounding. The black stone under his lips had felt warm, like real skin. He stared at the statue's face. Sure, he was imagining things. Then the stone lips moved. They curved into a small smile, and a voice like warm honey spoke. "You are welcome, brave little human." Jin stumbled backward, nearly falling over a small bush. His eyes went wide as he watched the impossible happen. The statue's closed eyelids fluttered open, showing bright golden eyes that seemed to glow with their own light. "This cannot be real," Jin whispered, his voice shaking. The golden eyes focused on him, and the smile grew warmer. "It is very real, Jin Park." Her voice had an accent he had never heard before, musical and ancient. "I have been waiting a very long time for someone like you." You know my name?" Jin's voice came out as a squeak. "I know many things. I know you were a medic in the war. I know you saved 17 different species during the Battle of Kepler Station. I know you have visited me every morning for 8 months, talking to what you thought was just stone." The statue's head turned slightly, looking directly at him. "I know you have a kind heart." Jin's legs felt weak. He sat down hard on a nearby bench, staring at the impossible sight before him. "You have been alive? This whole time?" "Not alive. Exactly. Not dead, either." The golden eyes looked sad. "I was dying when the war ended. My injuries were too severe for normal healing. So I used the old magic, turning myself to stone while my body slowly repaired itself. 50 years, Jin said, hardly believing it. 50 years of stone sleep. 50 years of healing. 50 years of waiting for the right moment to wake up. She paused, and her expression grew tender. Your kiss was not just a kiss, Jin Park. It was an act of pure gratitude, given freely with no thought of reward. Such acts have great power in the old magic. As she spoke, Jin watched in amazement as the black stone began to change. Color flowed through the statue like water, turning stone into living flesh. The scales on her arms and face became deep, green, and gold. Her skin took on a warm brown tone. Her long black hair moved gently in the morning breeze. She stepped down from the pedestal with fluid grace, her bare feet touching the grass. She was tall, nearly 7 feet, but she moved like a dancer. The wings on her back folded neatly against her body. I am Zarathan, she said, bowing her head slightly, and I owe you a debt of gratitude. You owe me? Jin laughed, a sound close to hysteria. You died saving my people. I should be the one owing you everything. You broke the last barrier holding me in stone sleep with a simple act of kindness. In my long life, I have learned that such kindness is more rare and precious than any treasure. She sat gracefully on the grass in front of his bench, bringing her eyes closer to his level. Tell me, Jin Park, what has happened in the 50 years I slept? How does the galaxy fare? Jin looked into those ancient golden eyes and felt his shock slowly fade into wonder. Whatever was happening, whoever this being was, she felt real and right and somehow familiar. It is a long story, he said. Zarathan smiled, and Jin felt warmth spread through his chest. I have been asleep for 50 years. I believe I have time to listen. And so, in a memorial garden that suddenly felt much less like a place of endings and much more like a place of beginnings, a 72-year-old human veteran began to tell a 990-year-old dragon woman about the world she had awakened to. Jin talked for 2 hours, telling Zarathan about the 50 years of peace that followed the war. He told her about the colonies that grew into cities, about the trade routes that connected distant worlds, and about the children who grew up never knowing the fear of war. But he also told her about the things that worried him. How some species had started to forget the lessons of the war. How the Galactic Authority had become slow and comfortable. How humans were often treated like newcomers who had gotten lucky, rather than the skilled allies they had proved themselves to be. Zarathan listened to everything, her golden eyes never leaving his face. Sometimes she nodded or asked a question, but mostly she just absorbed his words, like a sponge soaking up water. The young ones do not remember, she said when he finished. This always happens after wars. Peace makes people forget why the war was necessary. Do you think that is bad? Jin asked. Peace is never bad, but forgetting the cost of peace can be dangerous. She stood up and walked to where her statue base still sat empty. She touched the metal plaque with her name on it. Tell me honestly, Jin Park, how are humans treated by the other species now? Jin was quiet for a moment. He had tried to keep his story positive, but her question demanded honesty. Not as well as we deserve. Many aliens see us as the violent newcomers. They forget that humans died to save their worlds too. Ah. Zarathan's expression grew sad and angry at the same time. This is what I feared might happen. Zarathan's. Any. What do you mean? Zarathan turned back to him, and Jin saw something fierce and protective in her eyes. During the war, I spent months on human ships. I fought beside human soldiers. I watched human medics like you run into enemy fire to save wounded aliens they had never met before. Her voice grew stronger. Your species does not fight for conquest or glory. You fight because you believe all thinking beings deserve freedom. Jin felt a warmth in his chest at her words. You really think that? I know it. I saw it with my own eyes. When my wing was torn in battle above Kepler Station, A human medic crawled across 200 meters of broken metal under enemy fire to reach me. He was barely 20 years old, and I was a creature from his nightmares. But he risked his life to save mine. The Battle of Kepler Station, Jin repeated slowly. I was there. Zarathen's eyes widened. I was one of them. There were 50 medics in that battle. Jin's old memories came flooding back. I do remember a wounded dragon. We thought you had died. You were so badly hurt. I nearly did die. But your people saved me that day, and I lived long enough to help win the war. Zarathen moved closer, studying his face carefully. It might have been you. It might have been your hands that stopped my bleeding. They stared at each other in silence, both thinking about that terrible day so long ago. Jin remembered the smoke and noise, the desperate fight to save everyone he could. Zarathen remembered the pain and the surprise of seeing enemies risk everything to help her. The galaxy owes humans more than they know, Zarathen said finally. And I think some beings want to keep it that way. Before Jin could ask what she meant, they heard voices coming toward the garden. Jin turned to see 3 people in blue Galactic Authority uniforms, walking quickly down the main path. They looked official and serious. Hide, Jin said quickly, but Zarathen shook her head. I am done hiding, she said. But stay close to me. Jin Park. I do not think these visitors come with good intentions. The 3 authority officers reached them within minutes. The leader was a tall, thin alien with gray skin and 4 arms. His uniform had the marks of a commander. The other 2 were different species. One looked like a walking tree, and the other had blue fur and sharp teeth. Citizens, the commander said, his voice cold and official. I am Commander Vex of the Galactic Authority. We detected unusual energy readings from this location. Please explain what has happened here. Jin looked at the empty statue base, then at Zarathen standing calmly beside him. There was no point in lying. The statue came to life. Commander Vex's 4 eyes all focused on Zarathen. Impossible. Statues do not come to life. This one did, Zarathen said, her voice perfectly calm. I am Zarathen, former Empress of the Dragon Reaches. I was in healing stasis and have now awakened. That is impossible, Vex repeated. Dragons are extinct. This is clearly some kind of trick or illegal technology. Jin felt anger rising in his chest. Sir, with respect, dragons are not extinct. They fought with us in the war. This lady saved human lives. Commander Vex turned his cold stare to Jin. And you are? Jin Park, former Earth Defense Corps medic. Ah, a human. Vex's tone became even more dismissive. That explains the confusion. Humans often misunderstand complex situations. Zarathen's golden eyes flashed with anger, but she kept her voice level. Commander Vex, I am exactly who I claim to be. I have committed no crimes and violated no laws by awakening from stasis. Nevertheless, Vex said, pulling out a set of metal restraints, you will come with us for questioning and analysis. We cannot have unknown alien entities wandering around human colonies without proper documentation. I will not be going anywhere with you, Zarathen said firmly. You do not have a choice, Vex replied. He nodded to his 2 officers, who began moving toward her. Jin stepped between them and Zarathen without thinking. Wait just a minute. You cannot just arrest someone for existing. Move aside, human. The blue-furred officer growled. This does not concern you. It concerns me very much, Jin said, his old combat training making him stand straighter. This woman is a war hero. She deserves respect, not harassment. Commander Vex laughed, a sound like breaking glass. A war hero? Human. Your species barely contributed to the war effort. You were useful as cannon fodder, nothing more. The insult hit Jin like a physical blow. But before he could respond, Zarathan spoke. Her voice was quiet, but it carried the weight of centuries. Commander Vex, you have just made two serious mistakes. First, you have insulted the bravest species I have ever known. Second, you have done so in front of me. Her eyes began to glow brighter. I suggest you reconsider your approach. Vex just smiled coldly and gestured to his officers. Take them both for questioning. As the two alien officers moved forward, Jin felt Zarathan's hand touch his shoulder. Her touch was warm and somehow reassuring. Stay calm, Jin Park, she whispered. Let me show these fools why dragons chose to fight beside humans. The blue-furred officer reached for Jin first. That was his mistake. Jin might have been 72 years old, but 50 years of civilian life had not erased his military training. He ducked under the alien's grabbing arms and swept his leg, sending the officer tumbling into a flower bed. At the same moment, Zarathan moved with speed that seemed impossible for someone so large. Her hand caught the tree-like officer's reaching branch and twisted. The alien yelped and stumbled backward. Enough, Commander Vex shouted, pulling out a weapon that hummed with energy. Both of you will surrender now, or face the consequences. What consequences? Zarathan asked, her voice dangerously quiet. For defending ourselves against unlawful arrest? You have no rights here, Dragon. You are not a registered citizen of any authority world. You are an unknown entity of potentially dangerous power. Vex kept his weapon, pointed at her. Human colonies fall under our protection, and we will not allow uncontrolled alien forces to threaten them. Jin felt his anger boil over. Threaten them? She died protecting them. So you claim, Vex said with a sneer. But humans are known for exaggerating their importance and the importance of their allies. The historical records show that human contribution to the war was minimal. What historical records? Zarathan's eyes blazed brighter. I lived through that war. I fought in it. I watched humans sacrifice everything to save species they had never met. Ancient memories are unreliable, Vex replied. Modern analysis of the war shows that the major species did the real fighting, while humans provided basic support functions. Jin stared at the commander in shock. Basic support functions? We lost millions of people. Regrettable. But wars require sacrifices. The important thing is that the superior species were able to achieve victory. Vex's tone suggested he was explaining something simple to a child. Humans served their purpose. Zarathan stepped forward, and Jin felt the temperature around them rise. Commander Vex, I think you and I need to have a serious conversation about what really happened in that war. I have no need to listen to the fantasies of a creature that may not even be real, Vex said. But his weapon trembled slightly in his grip. Oh, I am very real, Zarathan said softly. And if you knew anything about dragons, you would know that we do not lie. Ever. She raised her hand, and golden light began to glow around her fingers. Let me show you something true, Commander. Let me show you what this memorial garden really is. The light spread from her hand to touch the nearest statue. The stone figure of a crystal warrior began to glow with the same golden light. Then, the light jumped to another statue, and another. What are you doing? Vex demanded, but his voice now carried fear instead of authority. I am activating a system that was put in place 50 years ago, Zarathan replied. A fail-safe, created by the Alliance High Command, for use in desperate times. All around the garden, statues began to glow. Jin counted 12 different figures lighting up like beacons. The air hummed with power that made his skin tingle. Each statue in this garden contains more than just memory, Zarathan continued, her voice carrying easily across the space. Each one holds the preserved essence of a warrior who died protecting human worlds. We volunteered for this, knowing that someday we might be needed again. Commander Vex's weapon fell from nerveless fingers. That is impossible. The technology does not exist. Dragon magic is not technology, Zarathan said with a cold smile. It is something far older and more powerful. And right now, it is telling me that we were wise to prepare for this day. What do you mean? Jin asked. Zarathan's expression grew grim. The reason I awakened today was not just your kiss, Jin Park, though that was the catalyst. I awakened because the old magic sensed a familiar threat returning to the galaxy. The Devourers, Vex whispered, his gray skin turning pale white. You know that name? Zarathan observed. Interesting. Because according to official authority records, the Devourers were completely destroyed 50 years ago. Vex looked around nervously, as if expecting someone to overhear. The official records are correct. There have been no Devourer sightings since the war ended. And yet my magic woke me to fight them again. Zarathan's golden eyes studied the commander carefully. How do you explain that, Commander Vex? Ha. The alien said nothing, but Jin saw sweat beading on his gray skin despite the cool morning air. Perhaps, Zarathan continued, the authority has not been entirely honest about the state of galactic security. Perhaps there have been signs of Devourer activity that were ignored or covered up. That is ridiculous, Vex said, but his voice lacked conviction. Is it? Tell me, Commander. How many Outer Rim colonies have gone silent in the past 5 years? How many distress calls have been dismissed as equipment failures? How many reports of strange energy signatures have been filed away and forgotten? Vex's 4 eyes darted around wildly. That information is classified. Of course it is. Zarathan's voice was full of disgust. Because admitting the truth would require admitting that the authority has become lazy and corrupt. It would require acknowledging that the species who fought hardest in the last war might be needed again. She gestured to the glowing statues around them. These warriors died protecting human worlds because they recognized something the authority refuses to see. Humans are not the weak newcomers you pretend they are. They are the species most capable of uniting others in the face of impossible odds. Jin felt a surge of pride at her words, but also growing fear. Zarathan? Are you saying the Devourers are really coming back? I am saying they never left, she replied grimly. They have been hiding, growing stronger, and waiting for the galaxy to forget the lessons of the last war. She looked directly at Commander Vex. And they have had help from species who thought cooperation was no longer necessary. Vex suddenly lunged for his dropped weapon, but Zarathan was faster. Her hand closed around his wrist, with gentle but unmovable strength. Commander, she said softly, I suggest you contact your superiors. Tell them that the memorial statues have activated, and that Zarathan the Ancient requests an immediate meeting with the Authority High Council. They will never agree to meet with you, Vex gasped. They will when they learn what I know about their secret deals with Devourer agents. Zarathan's smile was sharp as a knife. Yes, Commander. Dragons have very good memories and very good sources of information. She released his wrist and stepped back. You have 1 hour to arrange the meeting. If you refuse, I will awaken every statue in this garden, and we will handle the Devourer threat ourselves. Vex stared at her for a long moment, then at the glowing statues surrounding them. Finally, he nodded shakily and activated his communication device. As he began speaking in rapid, panicked tones to someone on the other end, Zarathan moved closer to Jin. Are you all right? She asked quietly. Jin looked around at the magical lights, the awakening ancient powers, and the evidence that his peaceful retirement was about to end very dramatically. I think my quiet life just became much more complicated, he said. 3 statues came to life before Commander Vex finished his panicked call to headquarters. The first was a towering crystal being with 6 arms and skin that looked like living diamond. He moved with careful grace, each step making musical chiming sounds. I am Korath, The Starbreaker, he announced in a voice like wind through mountain caves. I died defending the human colony at Bright Waters. 2. The second looked like she was made of flowing water and starlight. Her form shifted and changed as she moved, sometimes solid, sometimes translucent. I am Moon Whisper of the Wind Dancers. I fell, protecting human evacuation ships at the Battle of Seven Suns. The third was exactly what Jin expected a dwarf to look like, but 3 times larger than any human. His beard was white as snow, and his arms were thick as tree trunks. Metal armor covered his entire body. Thane Ironforge, he said simply, his voice like grinding stone. Died holding the line at Firebase Charlie, while humans, civilians, escaped to safety. Jin stared at the 3 ancient warriors, hardly believing what he was seeing. These beings had died 50 years before he was born. But here they stood, looking around the modern garden with curiosity and growing concern. The energy feels wrong, Moon Whisper said, her form rippling with worry. The harmony that existed at war's end has been damaged. Someone has been meddling with the balance. Korath agreed, his crystal skin darkening with anger. I can sense deception and corruption spreading through the authority structures. Thane Ironforge simply grunted and pointed at Commander Vex, who was still arguing frantically with whoever was on the other end of his communication device. That one stinks of fear and lies. Zarathan nodded grimly. Our awakening was triggered by a return of the Devourer threat. But something else is wrong. The galaxy feels different than it should. Different how? Jin asked. Divided, she replied. During the war, all species worked together because they had to. Now they work against each other because they think they can afford to. Commander Vex ended his call and turned to face them, his gray skin now pale white with fear. The Authority Council refuses to meet with you, he announced, his voice shaking. They say you are either imposters using advanced technology or dangerous relics that should be contained. Of course they do, Thane Ironforge said with a bitter laugh. Politicians never change, no matter what species they come from. What else did they say? Zarathan asked, her golden eyes studying Vex's face carefully. They want me to bring you in for containment and study. All of you. Vex looked around at the 4 ancient warriors and swallowed hard. They have authorized me to use whatever force is necessary. Korath's crystal arms began to glow with inner light. Force? Perhaps, Moon Whisper said, her voice suddenly cold as space itself. The Authority has forgotten why they should treat heroes with respect. Jin stepped forward quickly. Wait. Before anyone does anything violent, let me ask a question. He looked directly at Commander Vex. Sir, you seem like a reasonable being. Do you really think trying to use force against 4 ancient warriors who died fighting cosmic horrors is a smart plan? Vex looked around at the glowing statues, the 4 awakened champions, and the obvious magical power humming through the air. His shoulders slumped. No, he admitted quietly. I do not. Then maybe you should tell us what is really happening, Jin suggested. Because I am starting to think there is more going on here than anyone is admitting. Vex was quiet for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely a whisper. There have been incidents. Ships disappearing near the outer rim. Colonies going silent. Energy readings that match Devourer technology. How many incidents? Zarathan demanded. 17 colonies in the past 2 years. 3 major shipping routes compromised. 47 ships missing. Jin felt his blood turn cold. 47 ships? That is thousands of people. The Authority claims they are isolated incidents. Vex continued miserably. Pirates, equipment failures, natural disasters. But some of us have seen the classified reports. What did the reports say? Korath asked, his crystal voice sharp. Devourer energy signatures at every site. But the High Council refuses to acknowledge the threat. They say admitting the Devourers survived would cause galaxy-wide panic. Thane Ironforge spat on the ground. So, they let people die rather than admit they were wrong. It gets worse, Vex said, his voice growing even quieter. Some authority leaders have been making secret deals. Trading routes, colony locations, defensive information. They think they can negotiate with the Devourers. Zarathan's eyes blazed with fury. Fools! You cannot negotiate with creatures that want to devour all life in the galaxy. But they promise to spare the species that cooperate. Vex explained desperately. The High Council believes they can save their own people by sacrificing others. Which others? Jin asked, though he already suspected the answer. Humans, Vex whispered. And any species that supports human colonies. The Devourers remember who hurt them most in the last war. They want revenge. Jin felt sick. So the Authority is planning to throw humanity to the wolves to save themselves. It is worse than that, Moonwhisper said, her form shifting with agitation. If the Devourers eliminate humans and their closest allies, they will have removed the species most capable of organizing resistance. Then they will be free to devour everyone else at their leisure. Zarathan finished grimly. Commander Vex nodded miserably. Some of us in the Authority tried to argue against it. We were told to stay quiet or face charges of treason. Jin looked around at the four ancient warriors, seeing the anger and determination in their faces. So, what do? We do what humans do best, Zarathan said firmly. We bring everyone together to fight the real enemy. The Authority will not listen to us, Vex pointed out. They have already decided their course. Then we go around them, Thane Ironforge said, hefting a massive hammer that had appeared in his hand from nowhere. We contact every honest military leader, every colony governor who still has a spine, every ship captain who remembers what honor means, and every human veteran who still knows how to fight, Jin added, surprising himself with his own determination. Zarathan smiled at him, and Jin felt warmth spread through his chest. Exactly. The Authority may have forgotten the lessons of the last war, but we have not. She turned to address all of them. Commander Vex, are you willing to help us contact the honest members of your forces? Vex straightened his shoulders. I swore an oath to protect all citizens of the galaxy. I will not break that oath now. No. Good. Zarathan looked at each of the awakened warriors in turn. My friends, are you ready to fight one more battle? Korath's crystal skin blazed with light. Moonwhisper's form solidified into sharp, determined edges. I am ready. Thane Ironforge's hammer began to glow with inner fire. I have been ready for 50 years. Finally, Zarathan turned to Jin. And you? Jin Park? Are you ready to help save the galaxy one more time? Jin looked around at the incredible beings surrounding him. Thought about the threat facing not just humans, but every free species in the galaxy, and felt something he had not experienced in decades. Purpose. I am ready, he said firmly, but I am going to need to make some calls first. If we are doing this, we are going to do it right. As Jin pulled out his communication device to start contacting other human veterans, Zarathan placed a gentle hand on his shoulder. Thank you, she said softly. For what? For reminding me why dragons chose to fight alongside humans in the first place. The emergency call reached every human veteran on Haven Prime within 2 hours. Jin had not expected so many to answer, but by afternoon, the memorial garden was full of old soldiers, engineers, medics, and support staff who had served in the Great War. They came in hover chairs and walking with canes. They came with gray hair and lined faces and eyes that still held the sharp focus of trained fighters. They listened as Zarathan and the awakened warriors explained the threat. And they did not argue or complain or ask for someone else to handle it. They simply asked what needed to be done. The first Devourer scouts will reach Haven Prime in 6 hours, Moonwhisper reported, her form shimmering with the energy she used to see across space. 3 ships, moving fast and quiet. Small force, noted Commander Sarah Chen, a human woman who had commanded star destroyers during the war. They are testing our defenses, or trying to eliminate key targets before the main attack, added Dr. Marcus Webb, an elderly engineer who had designed defensive systems for half the colonies in human space. Jin watched the planning session with amazement. These people had not worked together in 50 years, but they fell into old patterns like putting on comfortable clothes. Veterans from different services shared information smoothly. Alien allies who had arrived throughout the day integrated seamlessly into human command structures. And at the center of it all, Zarathan coordinated between groups with the skill of someone who had led armies across the galaxy. The Authority forces are still 6 hours away, Commander Vex reported. He had spent the day trying to rally honest members of his organization, with limited success. Most of my people are being held at headquarters under guard. The corrupt leaders do not want witnesses to their betrayal. Then, we fight with what we have, said Thane Ironforge simply. He had spent the afternoon teaching human engineers how to modify their old equipment with dwarf mining technology. Quality matters more than quantity anyway. As evening approached, the small fleet of human civilian ships positioned themselves around Haven Prime. They were not warships, mostly cargo haulers, passenger transports, and mining vessels operated by the veterans who had never quite been able to stop serving their communities. But Dr. Webb's modifications had turned them into something more dangerous than they looked. And the ancient warriors had brought knowledge that turned outdated human technology into weapons that could hurt even devourers. Jin found himself assigned as a medic again, something that felt both familiar and terrifying. He was setting up a medical station in the garden when Zarathan approached him. "How do you feel?" she asked gently. "Scared," Jin admitted. "I am 72 years old. I should be spending my evening reading books, not preparing for space battles. Age is just a number," Zarathan said with a smile. "I am 990 years old, and I still feel nervous before fights." Jin looked at her beautiful face, seeing the worry she was trying to hide. "Are we going to win?" "I do not know," she answered honestly. "But I know we are going to try. And I know that trying is what makes beings like us different from beings like the Devourers." Before Jin could respond, alarms began sounding across the colony. Moon Whisper's voice echoed from communicators everywhere. "Contact. 3 Devourer scouts approaching from the dark side of the moon." The battle began in space, far above their heads. Jin could not see the ships fighting, but he could hear the radio chatter from human pilots as they engaged an enemy they had hoped never to face again. "This is Cargo Runner 7, engaging lead scout. Medical Transport Mercy joining the fight. Dr. Webb's modifications are working. Heavy Lifter Big Mountain moving to intercept. These old bones still have some fight left." The space battle lasted 20 minutes. When it was over, all 3 Devourer scouts had been destroyed, but 2 human ships were badly damaged and limping home. Jin worked frantically as wounded pilots and crew were brought to his medical station. His old training took over, and he found himself moving with skill and confidence he had not felt in decades. Other medical veterans helped him, creating an efficient team that saved lives with the same dedication they had shown 50 years earlier. But the real surprise came as he was treating a pilot with severe burns. The woman looked up at him with pain-filled eyes and whispered, "Sir, are you Jin Park, the medic from Kepler Station?" "I am," Jin confirmed, continuing to work on her injuries. "My grandfather told me about you," she said weakly. "You saved his life when he was young. He always said human medics were the bravest beings in the galaxy." Jin felt tears sting his eyes. "I just did my job." "No," the pilot said firmly. "You did more than that. You gave my grandfather hope, and he gave that hope to me." As Jin finished treating her wounds, he realized that Zarathan had been standing nearby, listening to the conversation. She approached as he finished. "Do you understand now?" she asked softly. "Understand what?" "Why dragons chose to fight beside humans. Why we were willing to die for your colonies." She knelt beside him, bringing her golden eyes level with his. It is not because you are the strongest fighters or the smartest strategists. It is because you inspire others to be better than they thought they could be. Before Jin could respond, new alarms sounded. This time, the threat was not in space. Major Devourer force emerging from hyperspace, Moon Whisper announced. 12 ships, including 2 planet destroyers. They will reach Haven Prime in 1 hour. The main battle was about to begin, and Jin knew their small force could not win against such overwhelming power. But as he looked around the memorial garden, seeing humans and aliens working together with the same desperate determination that had won the last war, he felt something he had not expected. Hope. Zarathan, he said suddenly, if we do not survive this, I want you to know something. What? Kissing you this morning was the best decision I have made in 50 years. She smiled, and the expression was so beautiful, it made his heart ache. Jin Park, we are going to survive this. And when we do, I am going to kiss you back. The promise carried them through the desperate hour that followed. Human ships fought with courage that amazed their alien crews. Ancient warriors wielded powers that had been forgotten for centuries. And in the medical station, Jin saved lives with hands that were steady and sure despite his age. When the battle ended and the Devourer fleet was broken and scattered, Jin found Zarathan sitting on the grass where her statue had stood that morning. She looked tired, but victorious. We won, he said, hardly believing it. We did. She agreed. But, more importantly, we remembered who we really are. Jin sat beside her, looking out at the garden where humans and aliens were already working together to treat wounded and repair damage. So what happens now? He asked. Now we build something better than what existed before, Zarathan said. A galaxy where cooperation is not just for emergencies, but for everyday life. She turned to face him, her golden eyes warm with affection and promise. And now, I believe I owe you something. Her kiss was soft and warm and tasted like hope for the future. When they finally separated, Jin realized that his quiet retirement was definitely over. But for the first time in 50 years, he was perfectly happy about that. Around them, the memorial garden bloomed with new life, and the galaxy began to remember the lessons it should never have forgotten.